Okay, so probably you recognize this image. This is not one of our 250, but I happen to have, when I was a freshman in college, I had this image in poster form on my dorm room wall, as did many girls of my age. Very popular Monet, we know for the water lilies, among other works, but he's very well known for water lilies, kind of painting these images over and over again. Um, these aren't necessarily part of a series, but he is, continuing, going back to the same subject over and over again, which is of note because we'll come up against that idea in just a moment, as well as in the future. So all these different water lilies. Here's the man himself. And you can actually even watch videos. There was, film recording by that time, and so you can watch videos or films of Monet painting, which is pretty cool. Um, so before we get into this work, which is the Saint-Lazare Station, we need to know a little bit about. So I mentioned, so that was all Monet visiting the same subject over and over again. So we need to talk about Paris because Saint-Lazare Station is of a subject of a train station in Paris, the most busiest train station in Paris, the busiest train station in Paris, of course. So we need to go back a little bit in time, and think about the layout of Paris. There was a renovation of the layout of the city prior to this new renovation of the city, new layout of the city. Paris was laid out like a medieval city. And essentially, what that means is lots of twisting, turning, extremely narrow streets, really hard to get around, really hard to, not efficient at all, right? Because if the streets are very narrow and very twisty, then it's hard to get from place A to place B very quickly, right? And so now we're in the mid 19th century, and what are we interested in? Speed, 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 speed. Remember the Industrial Revolution? Okay, so Paris is renovated, and he is instructed by Napoleon III. We're on to the third Napoleon here. To our renovator, our designer rather, Haussmann, is instructed to bring in a design that lets a lot of air in, lets a lot of light in, makes fountains, makes Paris in that way kind of more beautiful, more easily navigated. So it became a planned city. It's more efficient, right? More efficiently laid out. So we are in the Industrial Revolution, and with the Industrial Revolution, as you recall from listening and watching and thinking about that video on the Palace of Westminster, brings in a lot of dirt, right? It's kind of a filthy, messy, polluted time, and so the new plan seeks to undo some of those effects of industrialization. So more light, more air, but also conveniently, by changing the very narrow, twisty Parisian streets to wide avenues, it's very difficult to, build up a barricade a la Les Miserables, and prevent the forces from getting at you, right? And so it also takes care of that problem for the powers that be. So we want to think about speed and how speed is increased with the new design of Paris. Okay. Everything that I've just said, of course, is context, right? Okay. So there's the new design of Paris, right? So we can see the different arrondissements. If you've ever been, the way it's kind of different sections. All right, so you can see. All right, so we have this work, the Saint-Lazare Station. All right, so it's one in a series of, oh goodness, I want to say 12, but I can't remember. But it's one of a series. So again, anytime we come across a series, we want to think about, okay, what were the other series? How is this the same? How is this different, etc. So what I want you to think about before you watch the video is to really work on describing this composition. All right. What are the brush strokes like? What are the colors like? How does it seem to be laid out? What's the difference between the foreground, the midground, and the background? So really describe, and what kind of shapes do we see? It's obviously well, if you know anything about impressionists, it's an impressionistic piece. And impressionism was originally actually hurled at these artists as an insult. Very much like the term Gothic. Gothic was initially an insult, but they went ahead and embraced it. And so, what do we mean by impressionism? Well, we're talking about artists who are interested in just a particular moment in time. They painted very quickly. Their painting process was not a long, belabored, I'm going to take 3 months to finish a painting. It was, they painted as quickly as possible in order to capture the feeling, the experience of a moment, right? They're not attempting to be objective in their painting. So this is clearly not an attempt to represent life as it appears to the eye, right? So why? Because photography can do that now. Why would a painter want to do that if photography can do it? They're interested in doing other things. And so impressionism is part of that kind of reaction. What do artists do after the revival of photography? So when we talk about impressionist artwork, stylistically, we're talking about, like I said, there's a quickness to the brushes. There's kind of an abbreviation to how they paint. It's not, fully articulated. Not all the lines are fully articulated. And there's a certain spontaneity about it as well. Many of the artists painted en plein air, which means they painted outside. So they wanted to go and they wanted to paint, for example, this train station. They would go to the train station. They would set up their, movable stool and their collapsible easel, and they'd paint really quickly. And that's how they, rather than making a sketch and taking the sketch to a studio, which would have been the typical way of creating a work like this, is you make a sketch and then you go inside your studio and work on it. And so we want to think about, okay, so what's this composition, or what's the subject here? It's a train station. Is it beautiful? Right. So we need to think about that and think about Monet's decision to paint a train station. Right. Again, we want to think about industrial evolution and the speed. And are humans depicted here? Yeah, they're depicted. Are they important? All right. So another one in this series that he made of the Saint-Lazare Station over and over again. All right. So why was he so interested in this station? It was the largest and busiest train station in Paris at the time. And so Monet had rented an apartment nearby. And so this was understood to be like this is the future. All the trains come in here, and they come in from the out, the suburbs and the exurbs, et cetera, and they come very quickly into Paris, and it's all about speed and efficiency. And being modern. And so that's one of the reasons why he would have painted this. So he asked for permission, because obviously you got to sit down and set up a stool. Somebody's got to say, okay, otherwise they're going to kick you out. So back to what impressionists are interested in. So we talked about the quickness, the improvisation, or the sketch-like quality to their brushstrokes, but they're also greatly interested in light, and how light and the way light changes, how it affects the subjects that they're painting. Okay. And so light and the effects of light are a big, gigantic deal to the Impressionists. We'll notice also in this series that he made, he doesn't paint the same viewpoint over and over again. He changes his viewpoint. This work right here, as well as ours, are quite similar in many ways. Obviously, we can tell the same spot, or very similar at least, but the other ones are different as well. So it's not just the same view of the same place over and over again. I mention that because that's going to become important later on when we get into Cubism. So he's interested in the effect of color and light rather than the machines, right? So how does the light and the look on the machines? How does the color look on the machines? How does the color and the light look in the space? So yes, even though the subject is a contemporary, is a train station, is super modern, that's not actually the primary interest. So here are the other works in the series, and you'll watch this video. Thank you very much.